Welcome back to Open Topics. Yep, this is just my opinion on certain things and, well, stuff that recently came up. Now, recently, as of last week, actually it was early this week, it was announced that Marvel got the license to Conan the Barbarian after Dark Horse had the license for the past 18 years. Excuse me. But the obvious question is, since they got this license, what license do they get next? Are they going to take another license from the topic of this one is simply this: what license is Marvel going to get next? Well, here's kind of thing. Let me talk about briefly about Star Wars and Conan. Star Wars they actually got just a few years ago, and that was the first one they took away from Dark Horse, and then they took away Conan the Barbarian. So thinking like, what kind of license to get next? Well, I think this is a trend Marvel is doing, is that excuse me, that Marvel is getting back licenses they had in the past. I mean, first it was Star Wars, and now it's Conan the Barbarian. Now, here's the thing: when Marvel first had these two licenses, Conan was the first one they ever got the license to, and they did a lot with this character. They gave him two long-running, ongoing series. The first one lasting for 275 issues, which was the main Conan the Barbarian series, which was largely done by Roy Thomas for almost a good majority of the series was written by him. Though there was a good about 8 years when it was not written by him, but a good majority of the series was written by Roy Thomas. The other course was the black and white comic book, The Savage Sword of Conan, which had a backup feature featuring Solomon Kane. That lasted for a good 250 issues ish. Um, Even after the series ended, even after those two respective series ended, Marvel still used the Conan license by launching a series of mini-series and one-shots. Marvel did a lot the first time they had Conan. In the case of Star Wars, they didn't do very much when they had Star Wars license. They gave it one long-running series, which lasted for 107 issues, four king-size specials, and a couple mini-series, and that was it. They did not do very much. They've done more with Star Wars in the past 3 years than they did the first time they had Star Wars. Now, one thing both Star Wars and Conan have in common is the fact that, well, they both had a Dark Horse for at least for 2 decades. Star Wars, I think Dark Horse got the rights published to that one. I think it was back in the early 90s. They had the comic for a good almost a little over 20 years before they lost the comic to Marvel. Before they lost the license and gave it to Marvel. But at least in the case of Star Wars, they released the three comics they had at the time when they ended. It was which is a simple Star Wars comic, which lasted for 20 issues. There was also a couple mini-series. One was a series for Darth Vader. The other was a mini-series for Darth Maul, which, by the way, that is actually the only comic from Dark Horse that's actually canon with the it's actually canon in the new Star Wars canon, which I think a lot of people are very happy with that. But since Marvel's got these two licenses, in the case of Conan, what Dark Horse done with, they did a lot with this character, launching several ongoing series, mini series, and one shots. A little bit more what Marvel's done, but pretty much about the same amount of stuff they did for both respective companies. I though currently right now, Conan is enjoying a mini series crossover with Wonder Woman, which is written by Gail Simone and artwork by Aaron Lipsey. This week they released the fifth issue of the series, and the final issue is coming out next month. And as far as I can tell, this is the last Conan comic going to be published by Dark Horse. Yep. So the obvious question is, what's next? Well, some people theorize maybe Marvel's going to take Alien Predator from Dark Horse because they own Fox, because Disney owns Fox now. Here's the reason why I don't think that they're going to take that. First, due to the fact that Marvel has never published either an Alien Predator comic before, and they're both doing fine over at Dark Horse, and they're currently, get this, they're the longest running licensed comic they actually have. They've had this comic they had license for these two franchises for the past 30 years. Yeah, so I highly doubt that Dark Horse is going to lose these two licenses anytime soon. Mm-hmm. But what comic license would they get next? Well, I definitely think they should definitely take King Cole and Solomon Kane away from Dark Horse, and there's a very good reason for that. Well, here's what they done with Solomon Kane. They released two trades that collect Solomon Kane's run from Marvel, Like one was like collecting like all of his backup stories and everything else related to his run. The other was collecting the miniseries and the 3 issues of Marvel Premiere he appeared in, and published by Dark Horse. All Marvel did with the all Dark Horse did with the character was give him a couple miniseries, and that is it. Yeah, they did more with Conan than they did with Solomon Kane. Basically, another Robbie Howard character. King Cole, as far as I can tell, they gave him like a couple miniseries, and then for some reason last year, IDW published a comic called Call the Eternal, which I thought was a little odd because I thought Dark Horse owned a license to it, and also IDW's published a Call comic. Okay, fine. So I definitely do think Marvel might get a license to those two because Marvel would do a lot more with these two characters than frickin' Dark Horse would. Though in the case of Marvel, they didn't do much with Solomon Kane anyways. They basically made a backup feature in the Savage Sword Conan for like a decade. Appeared in a backup feature for Conan the Barbarians, a mini series. They did a little bit, they did kind of somewhat with him, but mostly put with just a series of backup stories. They didn't do much with him. King Cole, they didn't do much with him either, but they might get the license to publish these two characters again. Well, King Cole, I think they should because there's an issue of Marvel team up when Spider-Man teams up with King Cole, so I definitely think this would be a good idea. Solomon King because he's an interesting character because he's from the era of Queen Elizabeth the First, so I definitely do think he'd be a good idea, especially if they can use him as a crossover with Marvel 1602, which is set in the same time period. Who knows? It just depends what Marvel wants to do with it. I highly doubt they're gonna get back Red Sonja because that was another comic they had previously published. Though they didn't do much with her either because, well, she's a creation of Roy Thomas. She appeared mostly in a lot of Conan the Barbarian series. She had a few ongoing series published in Marvel and appeared in Marvel Feature, which was a series with second volume. They did not much with her either, but they might get her. But I highly doubt that Dynamite's going to give up the license to Red Sonja because they've been publishing her since 2005. Yeah, they've been publishing Red Sonja comics for the past 13 years, so I highly doubt Marvel's get the license to publish her at all. But there's other ones, like there's Doc Savage. Yeah, they actually published Doc Savage comic. I've never read it, but I don't know if the two comics are very good. They briefly had a license to Doc Savage. They did not do very much with Doc Savage when Marvel had him. They gave him 2 8-issue series, and he also appeared in Marvel 2-in-1 number 21, and he appeared also in an issue of Giant Size Spider-Man. Yeah, so I don't think they're gonna get back Doc Savage. I don't think so. No, Marvel's never had Shadow, but I think it might be King Cole, Solomon King. I think they might get those two licensed. I don't think they're gonna get back Halo because I don't think Marvel wants anything to do with Halo anymore. They're probably already done with him, and even though the comic is currently published by Dark Horse, I highly doubt they're gonna get that one. So the answer to the question is it's probably gonna be King Cole and Solomon Kane because it's not gonna be Alien Predator. It's definitely not gonna be Buffy because Marvel doesn't want anything to do with Buffy. Even though that the series was created by Joss Whedon, a fan favorite guy who's actually in a couple series for Marvel. Yeah, but I highly doubt they're gonna get that series. I highly doubt they're gonna get anything associated with any major franchise that Dark Horse does do because here's the thing with their franchises they have their licensed comics. In the case of Alien Predator, that is their bread and butter because that's how the company made a lot of their money over the past 30 years. It's through Alien Predator comics. Heck, even crossover comics when they had these two franchises fight each other. So yeah, so that's simply the way it is when it comes to that. Um, hmm. Let me think. Would there be any other comic they could get their hands on? Well, I don't think of any comic published by IDW that they previously published, like G.I. Joe, Transformers, Micronauts, or ROM. I highly doubt any of these four they're going to get their hands on. Why? Well, here's the thing. IDW is still publishing Transformer comics, and I highly doubt anytime soon that Marvel is going to get the license back because I don't think Hasbro is going to end licensing with IDW because here's the thing. The Transformer comics published by IDW are really good, and also, fun fact, IDW has done a lot more with Transformers than when Marvel had the license. Yeah, Marvel, when they had the license, they published one ongoing series, a few mini series, and one 12-issue maxi series, and a crossover mini series with G.I. Joe. That's really it. They did more with G.I. Joe than they did with Transformers. I knew that was quite obvious, but I don't think they're getting hands on any of the 4 franchises they used to own. But they could get something. I don't know. If I could think of another franchise they can get their hands on, if they wanted to, it could be RoboCop, even though the license is published by Boom Studio, but there has been comic published by them in the past few years. So there's that. Yeah, it could be RoboCop. It could be any comic, but I don't think it's going to be Alien Predator because I don't think Marvel has any interest to get their hands on these 2 franchises at all. All right, so that's it for this episode. Stay tuned for whenever I get a chance to Open Topics episode 3. I don't know what we're doing on, but yeah. So until we see you all whenever I get a chance to do another video. Bye.